You're watching highlights of the Hudson City Council meeting on August 11th, 2026.
My name is Linda O'Neill, and I reside at 7063 St. Ives Boulevard. We are in the planning stages of creating Piper's Key Garden, spearheaded by Dr. Jessica Hoffler and generously funded by our amazing Hudson Garden Club. The Hoffler family sadly lost their daughter, Piper Grace, after a mere 27 days. Had she survived, she would have lived with multiple disabilities. This garden will honor our littlest angels that are never forgotten and are always in our dreams. We will let you know when it's time to come over to enjoy it. I also wanted to mention that you will be able to purchase these lovely hip design t-shirts shortly. All right. All the profits are going to be going to funding inclusive and accessible upgrades at our parks. And in the next couple of weeks, I'll let you know, we'll have a press release on how you can purchase these. After 21 years of serving on Hudson boards, I've had a unique opportunity to see our amazing city staff work up close. This 4-year project involved every single layer of our government, from city planning, communication, engineering, finance, HCTV, public works and parks, all of our safety services, 1 city manager, 3 city councils, and 1 mayor. I have seen firsthand the high level of professionalism and heart each and every one of you bring to our city. As a resident, I am so fortunate. As a member of Park Board, I will never be able to truly express my gratitude. This playground shows the true heart of Hudson, and we did it as a team. Thank you.
Brian Beam, 2633 Hudson Aurora Road. It doesn't provide even remotely affordable housing for seniors to downsize into. Who is going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars more for a home that is substantially smaller than their current home? It doesn't provide housing for young families or young single Hudson residents trying to establish themselves back into the community post-college. It literally does not provide appropriate housing and properly priced housing for anybody that council has in the past indicated they want to make housing for in phase 2. I would further ask that council table the current poorly designed residential proposal and restart the residential design process using the community's already agreed upon past designs as a starting point. We only get one chance to develop this land, and we should use this opportunity to build housing that actually works for our residents, not overpriced, detached, single-family homes that don't work for our residents and do little to enhance the downtown and our community. Thank you.
Kent Cleveland, I live at 71 Keswick. This is Keith. We own a golf cart. I know that's being talked about tonight. I was just going to say, like, hey, having one here, like the community here, the small town feel, being able to drive my kids to dinner, to soccer, to all that has changed kind of our family dynamic. I know you guys addressed it last year. I don't know what's happened to make it an emergency to change it again. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'd just say, like, hey, you know, trust us that we're going to go through the proper procedures. Our cart's licensed. I wouldn't operate a car drinking downtown for dinner. I wouldn't operate a golf cart the same way. So I just asked to reconsider and kind of leave it as is.
The city engineer presented to the EAC on the city capital budget to help drive more discussion around EAC involvement within any of the projects. The EAC is going to continue to discuss bringing back a vendor fair in 2027. They've offered to take the lead on many of the efforts, but I've mentioned that they need to make sure that they keep city staff in the loop and align with all of our processes. There's also a discussion on following through with networking with other towns' sustainability teams and committees. Since council approved this last month, was it last month at the last workshop, they're looking for next steps on how to get that going. But I also attended the Dream Playground ribbon cutting over the weekend. It was a great event. I wanted to thank the mayor, Megan Higgins, Senator Weinstein, and Linda for their great speeches at the beginning. Really enjoyed that. My kids went back there today and they played for about 2.5 hours, and my wife had to drag them out, so it's definitely getting some good use. As a reminder on the upcoming e-bike and e-scooter forum, I'll discuss safety and communication around those uses. It's August 19th from 6 to 8 at the Barlow Community Center. I'll be joining Councilwoman D'Armo and I think Mr. Byrd, President Byrd as well, but we'll see.
First, I'm happy and excited to report to everybody in the public that the fire renovations and staffing, we will be going to 24/7 here in the coming week to 10 days. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We had planned on Labor Day was the goal, so we hope before the end of August that we'll have full-time 24/7 fire staffing, and then we're going to start moving the renovations over to EMS. We're going to move EMS over to where fire has been working temporarily, and then we'll start renovating their area starting in September.
Online with us tonight is our hydraulic analyzing company, GPD Group. Jesse Rufner is our modeler. He's very familiar with the city of Hudson. Has worked on a number of projects here in the city of Hudson, both for the city and private agencies in town. So a good fit, good study. This final presentation to council is the culmination of that study. We're probably about 95% complete with the evaluation. So at this point, we'll do the presentation. We'll go through it pretty quickly. And then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. We'll take council's comments and we'll incorporate them into the final study. And then we'll present that, and then the recommended projects out of this will eventually show up in our capital budgets. So with that, Jesse, go ahead and get started.
Okay. So as Brad mentioned, we're here to talk about the Brandywine Creek watershed. Couple of things we'll talk about on the agenda here is the area that you're probably mostly familiar with, some past projects that have occurred in the watershed and some current ones that city staff is working on, where we're at with the study, some analysis of the existing conditions that we've looked at, the alternatives we went through, and then as Brad mentioned, we can get into some questions and comments that you all may have at the end of the presentation. The black dash line represents the approximate limits of the city of Hudson. The bold red line would be the Brandywine Creek watershed. And then the different colored, the green, blue, yellow, orange are the streams that are tributary to Brandywine Creek, with the yellow one and the blue one being, the blue one's the Brandywine Creek tributary through downtown, and then the green and yellow being the primary Brandywine Creek streams. It's primarily the downtown part of Hudson, the older sections of town, and then it moves to the northwest part of the city. The August 2024 event kind of triggered renewed interest in the area and in the city. And so we wanted to update what the sewer district had looked at, and then look at with a little bit more detail in the watershed to come up with some additional alternatives to look at improving the storm sewer system in an area that doesn't have a lot of space, that's primarily developed in the area where we'd want to do something. So we're looking in the Brandywine area. Weren't as many calls. The storm kind of traveled from west to east and was more intense over the Tinkers Creek watershed. And you can see that based on the storm damage complaints. One thing we kind of noticed is that a lot of the damage was in the older parts of town where the infrastructure's more limited. There's no stormwater management as far as detention, retention basins in place, and the sewers are generally a little smaller than would be if designed today. So kind of looked at all of those things to kind of then develop, some of our alternatives to reduce some of that stuff. So, and then in 25, the city built a stormwater basin on the east side of the watershed off of Ravenna Street. So there has been a lot done, and this isn't even naming all of the projects, but I think compared to the Tinkers Creek watershed, there's been a lot of work done here to help alleviate the problems through the years. In addition to the ones that have passed projects, there are some future projects that are being looked at by Brad's team. So in the near Colony Park along Eastham Way, they're looking at doing a storm sewer to redirect some flow into the basin and expand the eastern basin. By Rosewood Grill, we've found a choke point in the storm sewer system there that a simple upgrade in that area would relieve a lot of pressure on the system upstream of Streetsboro Street and to help reduce some flooding there. At the Western Reserve Academy, looking at maybe expanding that basin to provide a little bit more storage and slow flow down through the Hudson and Aurora Street area there. Some of the homes in that area were hit the hardest during the August storm, and so that basin retrofit, if it could be implemented, would help quite a bit. And then some additional storm sewer upgrades in that area. So those are projects that the city is currently looking at. If residents had, what can I do to help? We could talk to them about rain gardens or rain barrels, downspout disconnections, things like that, because every little bit would help. And that way they could be involved as well. The next couple of slides, I'm going to go through about a third of the different alternatives, just kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and then what we had modeled. And then these we have costed, and we've come up with a preliminary ranking that we will share towards the end of the presentation. We looked at what would happen if we did a pretty large floodplain expansion here, provide a lot of volume, but just kind of due to its location in the system, didn't provide a lot of benefit for the cost. So it's something that likely won't have a lot of legs, but something we wanted to look at due to its proximity to downtown. And then ultimately it goes through the system. Either it goes into Brandywine Creek by Main Street, or currently some of that area floods and goes towards the Villa Street Apartments, and then before it goes under the tracks towards Morse Road. So this area here would help a lot of that. So it would be a good project. There were 4 other projects that we looked at that we did not include because of either the constructability or just the cost. So for example, the one where we were directing flow to the Hines Hill, north of Hines Hill to that large area that the city owns would have been upwards over $60 million. So just not feasible for the benefit you're getting. So the dark text you see on the screen here are the ones that we would recommend to the city to implement. And the total cost of those projects is approximately $24 million. The other ones, have benefit, but just these are the ones we felt like it gave the most bang for the buck and that we felt good recommending to the city. The total cost of all 17 that are listed here would be about $40 million if they were to be implemented.
The metrics that you use to measure the impact, is it houses? Is it dollars worth of damage? Is it square feet?
But it's flood benefit, number of structures removed or lessened in there. Property impact, so think private property impacts. Does it involve a railroad or something like that? Environmental impact, so do we think we're getting into Army Corps or EPA permitting? Or is there an environmental benefit? Does the project actually enhance something? So that could go 2 different directions. Jesse, was there any other major categories? I think I hit them all. And benefit cost was there, of course.
I had a resident reach out about the Winston Manor Basin project. Can you explain a little bit about the thinking of why that one's not in bold?
When we expanded the basin footprint, it didn't drop the water surface in the area here or downstream enough to have the benefit for the cost that it would be to implement the project. And the other thing is the sediment mitigation that would be needed, because there's some sediment in this basin already. We didn't evaluate that as far as the cost goes, but that would be something else that would need to be added. Like Blackberry Drive doesn't flood right now, so that was another thing we looked at when we were evaluating. Do roads flood? And if the roads that are flooding, are they, does it limit emergency services, those things like that to get through? And so this one, Blackberry doesn't flood to where, it doesn't flood at all through here. And so that it just didn't score high in that regard there.
Could we return to the draft ranking? Thank you very much. First question is, could you just help me understand better the difference between the numerical ranking of the projects versus the recommended bolded projects? Why aren't all the recommended ones the top and then the unrecommended ones the bottoms? Well, what's the difference?
And so one thing we looked at when we were coming up with alternatives we wanted to evaluate was, is the storm sewer functioning as it should? So like that segment of sewer was not functioning as it should. So as an alternative, we looked at it. It's a benefit, but in that area there were flooded homes. There was not really any road flooding. There's no environmental benefit, obviously, to that one. So is it a good project? Yes, but is it going to help residents, emergency services, and things like that? So if it didn't, And so that's where, with talking with Brad about our scoring, we might refine some things, and that may change a little bit where that would fall in the category.
Jesse, can you clarify? I think the numbering sequence was random. It was just projects that we nominated through the model development. So it says rankings, but is clarified. Did Rosewood Grill rank above number 2, above number 3, number 4, or is that just a sequencing?
These were a general ranking at one point. Like they're in, as we refine the rankings and continue to evaluate, it will rearrange.
That was my recollection. I think at one point in time they were in alphabetical order, and then we just started kind of moving them up and down. And at some point in time, Middleton Road storm sewer fell off the list. So.
My only other piece of feedback would be that the Middleton Park Basin project, I believe you said it would generally be a pretty beneficial project, and we currently have plans to do, I don't want to use the word substantial, but some decent amount of upgrade to Middleton Park next year. It's budgeted. It's going to be renovation to that park. If we were going to do a stormwater, project at Middleton, next year would be the year to do it. So once again, I guess it's bolded, so it seems like it's probably higher than the 12 that it's currently at. But I would put some consideration on timing for Middleton Park, that next year would be the year to do something there. That's all.
So as far as valuations, is there not like a standard, a norm, a gold standard that most communities use, or?
There is not.
Okay.
No. So what may be a priority for the sewer district versus another community in Summit County? No, they're not consistent. What I'm working with Jesse on is what's important to Hudson. We always try to avoid private property impacts through our public input process. There was environmental concerns. There was a big proponent of that. So environmental benefits, pros and cons is in that matrix. I really want to avoid railroad impacts. So that's a big category for us, that whenever we involve the railroad.
That's the impact of these projects, but I'm thinking like what are you saving? What property are we saving? What people are we saving by doing them? So
the highest scoring will be the project benefit. The most impactful ranking category would be the benefit of the project.
Which will be measured by.
Right now we have it on a scale from -3 to +3. If it informs council, and we can put that in a memo form and send it out.
And the more objective we can be, something that is measurable, the better.
And, hey, if we're already working in a neighborhood or working in a park, maybe we need to align the stormwater project in that park with that budget year, and something else has to move. So rankings will play a factor, but when it comes down to it, we have a limited budget we need to work within as well.
I think Samantha would probably better address this, but there's been, a lot of talk in Manor people. So if it doesn't get the big project, is there something that can be done for that silt and the dredging or whatever can help that problem?
Yeah, we're still talking to the sewer district. They're actively looking at this model with us. I was hoping to see it rank a little bit higher on that, seeing some flood benefit out of that. So I'm not saying no to the project, but based upon this current ranking, I don't know where or when we would get to that project.
Do we have a budgeted amount for this? I like that Jesse said the biggest bang for your buck in the bolded ones. I like that. And we said, okay, that's $24 million, but in a perfect world, yes, we would like to do that. But do we even have what we could do 10, you know what I mean?
These projects are not yet been budgeted in any future capital projects.
I mean, I think it's nice to have those options available. Do they really make a substantial benefit? Would they provide?
No, you'd have to get thousands and thousands of them.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is there is no one clear-cut open space that we can do like a silver bullet project. So it is like eating the elephant. How do you do it? It's every little bite at a time. And that's why we started off as 20 projects. As a matter of fact, I think we were probably closer to 30 projects when we originally started this evaluation. Some immediately came off. I think during the public comment period, some of the residents spoke up and said, what about planting trees and maybe high asphalt areas? Yeah, that helps. Does it move the needle a lot? No, but we need to get every little ounce we can.
Maybe
right?
we should look at
Yeah, if we're building trails or beautification projects, build it at the same time. I will say that the footprint of that particular project sits largely within a FEMA floodplain area. If you're going to bring a backhoe in there, do it one time.
In all seriousness, I would like to see the rankings, just so if people reach out to me, I can explain why, I have something I can look at without having to ask, Tom all the time or you all the time. Can you tell me why this one was higher, or why this one would go forward, just so I have something and I can explain, well, we use these different things and this is why this one was ahead of it.
And in the state of Ohio, what is typically designed to, what year storm?
So storm sewers are typically designed to carry some cities have a 5-year, some a 10-year, to carry it within the pipe, and then they'll do the next one up, so a 10 or a 25-year before it surcharges to the road. Culverts and bridges are maybe a little bit bigger storm, but that's what you're looking at typically.
And then stormwater management is typically 100-year storms?
Yes, detention basins usually are up to the 100-year. And then we looked at the 10 through the 100-year storm. So some projects might not do a whole lot for the 100-year storm, but they do a lot for the 10-year. And since that's what the majority of the system can take, we thought that was still a benefit. So we're not hitting that mega storm, the 500-year plus, but we're looking at, due to the limited space within this watershed, doing what we can where we can.
And that's what I wanted to make sure was clear to the public, was that we are designing up into the 10 and 100 year, which are currently in our engineering standards. So the 500 to 2,000 years, as I have said in quotes, is more of a biblical type of storm that has come in. And I know there's public out there that feels the storm water frequencies are not correct anymore with FEMA and so on and so forth. We did move our stormwater management up to meet FEMA's new rules that are not in place yet, right?
Yeah, we updated our engineering standards last year to account for more intense rain events that we're seeing.
But I just wanted to make sure that was all clear to everybody, that the city is working within the confines of the latest technology and storm frequencies that are better than some of the others in the state.
I had a question on timing. Do we have a sense of, if we said, yes, go ahead, the recommended project's the $24 million, I know this is a little bit of a finance, when would this all happen? How many years are we talking?
I'd like to see 10, but I think we had $30 million of projects come out of the Tinkers Creek watershed, so it's 30 in this one and 24. We're looking at $50 million. I don't know of any community that can handle that.
Okay, so you're going to get us some info. As we budget, we're going to have ideas of how much we can commit, and then we'll talking about Tinkers Creek and Brandywine Creek and coming up with one or two of these that's possible for 27. Kyle?
Yeah, as we were talking finances, I pulled up the 5-year plan, and we have specifically a stormwater section under our 5-year plan, and I'm seeing for 2027 just shy of $2 million of projects planned, and from there it really tapers off. So was that we're just leaving room for when we do, and we expect to do about $2 million a year? Kind of what were the thoughts there, Jeff, if you could?
I think we were waiting on these studies to be complete, and then what, as you all have talked about, is look at what are the prioritizations, and then try to fit as many as we can within that 5-year time frame.
So we're trying to make sure that we will listen to council, and when you say, hey, let's do 10 sidewalk projects or whatever, $1 million a piece, we might want you to scale that back, because those are more like a want. And I know there's safety concerns, but it's hard to tell people who are being flooded that, they can't get their repair work done because somebody's getting a new sidewalk or whatever the case may be, or a paved parking lot in a playground or something like that. So again, we'll talk about all that in the fall.
To me, with these flood events, that's always one of the big things that I'm worried about. Like flooding's, we live in 3 watersheds. Flooding is going to happen. We're going to do our best to mitigate it. Flood water damage is bad, but it's not as bad as sewage backup.
All I can promise you is we will work diligently like we have in the past with the county to try to remedy these issues, but I have no power over the county. As you all know, back in June of this year, there was a fiber optic incident with a gas line in a community north of us, and it was a substantial damage to a large street, a street there with a bunch of houses. I think it was upwards of 20 homes have been damaged. Following that incident, we put a moratorium on horizontal directional drilling, which is a process, and it's one of the exhibits I think is really good that the city engineers provided in your packet to take a look at. There was a house explosion in Girard, Ohio, back in April, the end of April of this year, and talking to the mayor over there, I don't believe he's gotten a report. He said he would get it to me as soon as he could, and he has not gotten me a report on that one yet. So it could be months away on those 2 reports. They could be around the corner tomorrow, but we don't know.
The process is really good. It avoids that open cut scenario where we're open cutting roads or people's front yards. So there is a benefit. We've had some residents say, why do you even incorporate that process? Well, this is why, because we don't have to do road and sidewalk disturbance. So the process is a boring pit and a receiving pit on the other side of wherever that drilling is excavated. And then you can see on the left-hand side of the screen is this machine. It's the boring rig. It sends out the pilot hole first. And that's our most critical part of that process, is making sure that pilot hole is avoiding all those underground utilities. They're shown on this image under the roadway, and that yellow and red pipes there. So we want this new specification that we've put together really focuses on how do we locate where those are, how do we do it safely, and how are we going to remain diligent in that. We've talked internally about staying diligent and not being complacent with our inspection or our safety protocols here. It was largely talking about directional drilling terminology, and one critical item that the city manager noted is we should get a definition of what Hudson infrastructure is. So that didn't exist any place before. It's hard to believe, but it will be in there. But tonight I talk about like city manager noted, a little bit about what we're incorporating. I think it's a good specification. I don't know of any other community, at least in Summit County, that is going to this level of effort to ensure safety of our infrastructure and our public. In this new Section 11 is some design parameters, including required buffers from existing infrastructure. Typically, we want to stay 18 inches horizontally away from the infrastructure. Here, we're incorporating 3-foot separation where we can get it. Sometimes that is impractical, and we have safety measures if that requirement can't be met. And some of the design requirements on some of the plans that we have submitted to us would be implemented in this design standards too. So that is non-mechanical, non-cutting type equipment. So that's either the machine, it's loud, but that machine either vacuums up the material as we're looking for that initial, where is that gas service or that water main or that electric main. It uses air or water to do that excavation process. So there isn't that cutting and not that shoveling that we had, the shovel strikes that occurred in our own project. That's a huge improvement. That's a huge safety factor in our program. Not only do we want to locate utilities when we're crossing them, if we're parallel to them. There wasn't a protocol in place if we were paralleling them, so now you have to uncover every 50 feet along that parallel utility. If we're in a curve area, and there's a lot of curves in our streets, you would have to locate those about every 25 feet. Lastly, I do want to say that I think these new specifications are good. They're excellent. I've had other city engineers reach out to me and say, hey, after you've published yours, would you mind sharing them with us? We're considering updating our regulations as well. So I think it'll mean a much safer, not that we weren't safe before, but a much safer project overall. And that's not only for our directional drilling, for our fiber, but any projects that we incorporate directional drilling. It was not a requirement.
Gotcha.
The contractor could volunteer to use that method. They were using hand excavation primarily. Like I said, it's a specialized piece of equipment. It slows the process down. It does. So it wasn't a requirement. It now is a requirement.
We're making it a requirement.
We are making it a requirement.
I mean, just that it's less disruptive. You're kind of emphasizing that as far as showing us the exhibit and everything, right?
Yes, yeah. We were already doing it. It's not a super familiar project. I think most people driving past a construction site sees the backhoe and you can tell that they're digging a hole and putting a pipe in the ground. Here is a less obvious process. So I just wanted to, if I could, bring everybody's education on it.
Yeah, the hydro evac that's required now, is that just for us or is that also for other contractors, everybody?
That's across. So any work that takes place in a city right-of-way, a public easement, or on city property.
And I agree this is all great for the safety and everything, but the cost to roll this out with the new standards, both from a financial standpoint and the longevity of it, because I know we had a 3-year, 4-year plan to get this all rolled out. What does that impact look like?
There will be an increase in cost. I don't know what that is yet. We are in the process of modifying our current contracts or canceling them. We'll redesign with these new standards in place, and then we'll have real-life bid cost at that point that we'll share with our Velocity and our finance team on updating that.
And slowing down the process, though, because it does take longer to hydro evac. And
Yeah, I think the overall construction sequencing might take a little bit longer, yes. It will take longer.
Just to piggyback on that, I know it'll affect not only city projects, but private projects. Since we've had this pause, will there be any grandfathering if you already pulled a permit, you already started drilling, you had this pause, or moving forward, we'll all have to do it regardless if you already pulled a permit?
I'll verify with the city solicitor on that. It'd be my desire that this is the new standard regardless of what permit was provided at any given time.
There'd be no
grandfathering.
They're all waiting to hear from us what our new standard is, and then they would have to implement that to put it in. So we do have like a Hudson Public Power line going in on Atterbury. It's being directional drilled that we stopped, and now Hudson Public Power will have to follow this rule after we put this specification into place. And just to add, Enbridge did this, the gas company, and they were looking at just a ballpark, but we'll know what the bid, as Brad said, 20% increase is what they saw.
Do we think that requirement for hydro excavation is going to, we understand potential cost increase, do we think we're going to have people that won't be able to bid projects, that projects will be slowed down implementation-wise because maybe we've got, just throwing out a number, 3 qualified vendors now, but maybe there's only one that's going to take this on because of the hydro excavation or other things. Have we looked into the risk of implementation because of these new standards? And
certainly going to reduce the contractor pool, but I think we have a big enough project. I don't foresee us not being able to find qualified contractors to do this work for us.
It's safe when you put a tape above it and you dig down and you go, oh, there's a gas line here. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We, on our contracts, hit 3 gas lines with a hand shovel, metal shovel cut through a plastic gas line, and just let gas air, come out that's under pressure. We didn't have a fire. We didn't, have obviously any explosions or anything. But again, that just goes to show you how the difference in safety. And then when that happened, we implemented stricter in inspection processes, again, because of what they were using. But at the end of the day, in this last month, hydro excavating, vacuum excavating is really the real term, is the way to go if you do not want to have destruction on different types of piping.
In there, but we're following a process that another entity in the area has used quite successfully. speaks to the availability of the vendors who can do this process. I'm very much in favor of this. And my last comment, I know we discussed the carryover funds at the workshop last month. I'd like, once we have that kind of preliminary estimation on increase in project costs from these requirements, I'd really like to take a serious look on applying that, some amount of that, we can have that discussion to the amount, but some amount of that carryover balance to offset these increase in costs.
The engineer's estimate before he bids those projects out with this new spec, he has to put that in, because if we don't raise it up to 20%, I'm just, I'm going to listen to Brad. Obviously, we don't know if that's etched in stone, but we have to be within 10% of that estimate, or we have to reject all bids. So we definitely want to get our numbers up to the correct numbers, as you mentioned, and we would have that whenever we get this section of the code in place. Next 30 days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. By mid-September. The ones that are very close, we'll call them 90% or more done in the different neighborhoods, we are going to be paying an extra fee, but we want to complete those existing contracts because they're almost done. We're talking hundreds of feet and they're done with this. So long story short, we would cancel those contracts. We would rebid those contracts under the new spec. And then basically we're looking forward to seeing what the actual bid numbers are, how many bidders we get. And then we want to report back to council too, because what if that number is too high and it wasn't something that we projected?
Well, that issue should be going away by the visual confirmation that we're requiring the specification. You have to find that piece of critical infrastructure before you can proceed with the drilling.
And the checklist.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody on council brought up the fact of a private well that has a service line going to a house and they get free gas. That doesn't get marked out. And those are the kind of things that are in that checklist.
Yes.
So we're going to work to remove those. Brad has a plan in place. And again, we don't feel comfortable pulling out flags that other people put in, so we want our contractors and other contractors to do that and remark. So when they go to the new spec.
Our current step right now is we are taking the community feedback from the July 22nd session. That's where we presented 3 revised or refined plans to the community. We had 230 surveys completed. RDL is taking that information and working towards a preferred plan. And we'd like to show you the working draft that RDL is processing at this time. We will be presenting that to the community on August 22nd, getting some additional and further feedback on that preferred plan, and then reporting back to council on September 8th. So those uses have not been incorporated into the preferred plan. From non-residential, plans 1 and 3 received the strongest support of the 3, although all 3 received an appreciable support. But both plans 1 and 3 had mixes of market hall, flex space, and community space, and the hotel from plan 3. So the framework going forward for the non-residential is the hotel, market hall, and community flex space. The preferred plan is to not have a intensity of development which would require a parking deck. By not having a parking deck, that also appreciably helps the TIF performance and allows it to recover the city's investment to date. Walker Parking Consultants is doing a downtown-wide parking study. So the city staff have been working on hourly parking counts for several days, which can help see where the hot spots are at different hours and in different locations. And that information is being given to Walker. And Walker will also be working on the parking needs for the proposed project. TMS traffic engineers will be preparing a detailed traffic study. We also are doing a smaller scale, streamlined hotel feasibility to give us some understanding if a hotel is viable in this marketplace. So of note, August 22nd will be the next large community engagement. That's a Saturday, and it will be on the actual project site. Our last session was on the street. This one will actually be within the site acreage. So this is a key night. If you have any additional comments, questions, or feedback for us, that would be great leading up to the August 22nd plan. RDL has added some additional curvilinear features to the streets, which was a strong item of interest from the survey. And then as you can see, we've got more traditional detached homes along Morris and some on Owen Brown to respect the historic neighborhoods to the west. Currently, the townhomes are at the interior. There may still be some study on where those townhomes land. And then on the north end, the hotel would be a flex room or flex space. That's been targeted as a community use space, and a key piece could be hosting winter farmers markets, Christkindle markets, things that are difficult in poor weather season or might need a hardscape adjacent. And the thought would be the market hall and the community flex space might both have large glass areas or overhead garage doors that could open to the hardscape plaza, which could also be part of the programming space.
I just want to note for the public before they see whatever this final plan is, I know there was a lot of feedback of different uses that people wanted that they may not see on here. And I just want to let them know that we are starting to have those conversations of where might those uses go in other places. So if there's anyone who's disappointed of I really wanted this that other people might have voted on, that we are starting some of those conversations.
We've noted that there's several uses that there's a community need for these uses, but it may not be appropriate to address in the Clinton Crossing site. We're going to make sure that those are on the list for council's capital budget consideration, so you have a chance to digest and see those. But would include just ideas such as the nature center, a dedicated senior center, dog park, and community theater.
I don't see anything that's very specifically a playground. And I just would very much, I know a lot of residents with young children would very much like to see a proper, preferably enclosed playground somewhere in our downtown space. If you have young kids, we've got the green, First and Main Green, which is completely surrounded by roads. We just do not have a safe enclosed area for young children anywhere. And I'd really like to see that.
No, that's helpful to hear. We do anticipate additional descriptive information and imagery photos by the 22nd. There has been some talk of some naturescapes where you might have large boulders that you could play on, things of that nature. But that's a good point. Maybe it needs an even more formal, traditional playground.
It can be a very small playground, but something preferably enclosed with actual equipment.
Yeah, the hotel would be incorporated into that parking analysis, yes.
And then I think like we've heard from, you just mentioned, and we heard from other consultants, the importance of ranges. And so we're giving people ideas, but we're acknowledging that nothing can be as finite as just one particular number.
That's helpful. We have just been talking about that further for the August 22nd to acknowledge some range and some acknowledgement that this is a framework and is still going to need some further study plus some feedback from the developer partner at some point. A clear example we've talked about is things like back of house, loading docks, service areas. Those things alone may require some adjustment.
And sadly, if people have not heard, Mr. Rummiser did pass away just very recently. He was a crossing guard here in the city of Hudson for over 50 years. I believe he may have been 52 years where he was actively a crossing guard. Many families and people know him very well for being at that crosswalk there that's at North Hayden Parkway and Victoria Parkway. And I've met him several times. We went through the school the one time for his birthday, and all the kids were cheering for him as we walked down the hallway there at McDowell. And again, many families have utilized his services, and this is the request to see if council is amicable to consider this.
I think we would all be in support of that, and interested in hearing from the family as to what they think the appropriate name is. And if it's Clark's Corner, then we'd be okay with that.
Like the income tax, we dipped a little bit July as compared to June. We're still within budget though. We're about just under 1% above estimate through the end of July. So that's, as I mentioned, I think a few meetings back, the second half of the year we tend to bounce up and down a little bit, higher or lower. So, but we're still in good shape.
That we're still working through the capital project, so we haven't stopped anything. We're not backing up on anything, so all the projects are still going forward that we had planned.
And just for a point of clarification, it's on legislation, so unless there's a motion to suspend the rules and pass it on a first or second reading, it would go through 3 readings. The emergency language would just waive the 30-day pause after it is passed on whatever reading it's passed, which would implement it, obviously, 30 days sooner.
We just looked at it because next week is your second, the reading on this. So it was close with this dual meeting that we would be able to do it in early September. But if you want to move to consent, we're all in favor of that from our side.
That's a wrap from the council, where we heard about inclusive parks and Piper's Key Garden, worries over housing and golf cart rules, a deep dive into multi-million-dollar stormwater fixes, tougher rules for underground drilling, and the latest tweaks to Hudson's downtown plan. Keep an eye on upcoming meetings and community workshops, and check back here for more highlights to stay in the loop on what the council does next.